Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is that of Alice Adams and Tybor Vass. We're going to London, baby. Pack a bag, Heathrow, here we come. Let's go. Just a quickie, I'm not having gin because I have been a little under the weather, but I just wanted to show you. Can you see it? It's a pint glass and it's got my name etched in on it. How cool. One of my best friends brought me that pint glass and I thought, yeah, I'm going to bring it up to the shed for filming so that I feel a bit melancholy today, I'm not going to lie. So let's hope that a little chat with you about true crime can G me up a little bit. Let's go. We can but hope. Oh, found a little bit of coconut in my tooth. Oh, so like I say, we're London Heathrow. On the 10th of August 2011, police were called to a flat in New Road, Harlington, near Heathrow Airport. The reason that the police were there is because at 7 a.m. that morning, at a hotel next door to this apartment, strangely enough, but it will all make sense, 3 members of the receptionist team of that hotel, the Radisson Blue Edwardian, it's got a long name, I shall share it with you, that hotel. So the 3 receptionists, it's a huge hotel, so they have lots of people on the desk, and 3 of them did not arrive for their shift. Now this is unusual, so it was reported to the police. 2 members of the reception team lived in this apartment. So the police went round to this apartment, this flat, to do a welfare check. And what they found was a truly gruesome sight. They let themselves in, and in the living room on the floor was 20-year-old Alice Adams. She had a pillow or a cushion placed over her face. She had been stabbed to death. When they then went through the property, they found the naked body of 20-year-old Tybor Vass on the bed in a sort of posed position, and he too had been stabbed to death. The 3rd receptionist was missing, and this was Atilla Ban. Atilla, first name, Ban, second name. Atilla and Tybor were the occupants of the flat, so it was concerning that Atilla was missing, and they were initially worried about his whereabouts and whether he was hurt or abducted or whether he was dead as well. They had no idea, and they started to look for him, and he was also a person of interest. As the investigation began, so they were in the flat, forensics were everywhere, they were looking at the bodies in situ and taking evidence, trying to work out what happened. They noticed that Atilla had updated his Facebook status. No, what am I talking about? Not his state. Is it your status? You know, when you write something in Facebook. Anyway, he'd done that. He'd written on Facebook at like 6 something in the morning some weird comment about, I'd like to wake up from that nightmare, something like that. Just a weird comment. So, and that was at 6 something in the morning. So they knew that he had been alive at like 20 past, 6:30, but he was not there. The investigation then started to look at Alice and at Tybor. Like, what had happened here? Why were these 2 young people brutally murdered in this flat? Alice Adams had only been working at the hotel for 3 weeks. It was a new job for her, new position, and she was enjoying it. Alice made friends quite quickly. She was really bubbly, she was friendly, she was outgoing, she was easy to talk to, but she had especially bonded with Tybor. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Tybor, I think. Tybor was from Budapest, Hungary. That's why his name is unusual to me. It's not a name that is very common here. So they bonded and they became very close actually because they had something in common. Alice was a talented musician. She really was, and she was very artistic, very creative. She wrote poems. She was one of those people that just, arty and musical. She really had a musical talent. And Tybor, he was very much the same. He played nearly every instrument by the sounds of it. Especially he loved to play the piano. That was like his favourite instrument. So they both had this like incredible musical talent. And when you meet someone that's got something like that in common with you, yeah, of course you're going to be close and, chat about it. They became very close friends. like I said, Tybor was born and raised in Budapest, Hungary. Sadly, his father died unexpectedly and suddenly in 2007. So it was a big shock to the family. There was his mother, one older sibling, I think, then Tybor, and then a younger sister called Isabella. They were very close. Tybor had taught Isabella how to play the piano. They would sing together. They would do shows for their family. They were close-knit. They were often together. And when his father died, Tybor seemed to take on or shoulder a lot of responsibility. He went out and got himself a full-time job to look after the family. He was 15 at the time. So it's heartbreaking, isn't it, actually, when that happens. He was a teenager and he just sort of grew up very quickly. He really wanted to look after his mother, his sister, and he sort of took on that role. In 2010, he moved to London, and this is when he started working at the hotel. He decided to go to London, get a job over there. I think his plans of going to university in Budapest had fallen through. He wasn't accepted, even though he was incredibly gifted. But he was going through a turbulent time, so you never know what was going on there. So he didn't get accepted into the University of Budapest, and he came to London. And his mum must have. I think that's nice because he was shouldering. I am totally just speculating on the situation, but we know that he was shouldering a lot of responsibility and he felt responsible for the family and the money and everything like that. But it was perhaps good for him to get away and to just be a young man. So he came to London, he worked in the hotel. I imagine he was sending money back to his family. And that was his life for a year. He was a handsome chap. And he also was outgoing and confident. And I think this is why he and Alice and he, they really hit it off. So they met. She started working there after 3 weeks, but he'd already been there for a year. So they were getting on like a house on fire. I also think it's really cute because Alice played the guitar and she played the piano as well. And it's also tragic when I think about it because they really were sort of kindred spirits. She too would sing and perform and do shows with her sisters, as did Tybor, which is just, I think it's cute. Alice was also outdoorsy and she enjoyed being in nature. And she was creative in nature as well. She would do things like build tree houses and stuff. She just had a creative flair. She sounds lovely. Attila, he worked at the hotel as well. He'd been there for a longer time. He was older than these guys. So he was 31. So he was 11 years older. And what do you know? This case is so unusual because there's so many things that are just stranger than fiction. Is that what it is? Like, is that the phrase? Honestly, I mean, I love the story of how these two young people, both 20 years old, just have so much in common and they come together and they, in 3 weeks, they just, they're kindred spirits, it would seem. And I think that's lovely. But it's weird, isn't it? Like, of all the times and all the people that they come along, they meet each other. And then Attila, he's 31, he works there. He's in this story and he's from Hungary as well. So Tybor and Attila, both from Hungary. And I find that bizarre. Just find that really weird. Things like that in stories, it's like, what, you can't write it? But it's real, it's true. I promise you. So this means that Attila and Tybor, they too have something massively in common. They're from the same country. Attila and Tybor, they move in together because the hotel that they work for provides accommodation, and that accommodation is very near to the hotel, and they provide that for some of their workers and things like that. So it's handy because you're right there. And these guys were receptionists, so they probably do all sorts of weird and wonderful shifts because hotels are open, 24 hours, aren't they? So they lived right smack bang next to or behind, whatever you want to call it, the hotel. And they lived together. And it makes sense. They speak the same language. They're from the same place. Probably quite nice if you're both from the same place in a foreign country to have that. However, there was a small spanner in the works because Attila was gay and Tybor is not gay, straight. And Attila, fancied the pants off of Tybor. Kind of awkward if you work together and that situation sort of comes up. And it's often uncomfortable, isn't it, for the person on both sides, because you cannot help your feelings if you like somebody, and the other person can't help their feelings if they don't like the other person, or especially if they're of a different sexual orientation altogether. Like, it's not going to work, is it? So yeah, it's unrequited love. Not love, unrequited lust, fancy, you know what I mean, that. So it's a bit awkward, but they actually live together as well. So wow, tension going on, especially as Tybor, as a young, attractive young man, he got a lot of attention from the ladies. A lot. I like it a lot. I felt like that then. Yeah, he got a lot of attention from the young damsels. And I think Attila really struggled with it. I think it sounds from what I read that he couldn't shake off his feelings for Tybor. Now, like I said, Tybor had applied for university in Budapest the year before, and he was declined. But he applied again in 2011 and he got accepted. So, in August of 2011, he was going to leave the UK and he was going back to Budapest to go to university and start his higher education. So it was an exciting time for him. He was really excited. He felt like if he got himself a higher education, that he would then be able to get a better job and that he would then be able to support his family better. I mean, that's so sweet. And that was the plan. So on the 9th of August, a few people from the hotel had all rallied together to have leaving drinks and to sort of celebrate Tybors' success in getting accepted into university and the start of a new chapter in his life. I imagine that Alice was probably quite sad that he was going to leave, but again, it had only been 3 weeks. So these leaving drinks, this celebration, it was arranged to be at Tybor's flat, so Tybor and Attila, their flat. And it went ahead and lots of people sort of came and everyone was drinking. There was drugs, all sorts going on. And things that we will never fully really know, because the two people involved, when everybody else had left the party, the only 3 people that remained were Attila, Alice and Tybor. And it would seem like stuff went down. I have my own opinion, my own gut feeling on what happened, but you see what you think. Oh, Alice had texted her mum just after midnight to say that she wasn't coming home, that she was going to stay at a friend's house. So we can assume that she had decided that she was going to stay at the flat. I'm going to just describe the scene that the police found. So she was found fully clothed and she had a cushion over her face. And she had been stabbed 22 times in the front and the back, and then she left on the floor. She was on the floor. On the other hand, Tybor, he was found on the bed. Now, they quickly determined that he had not died there. He hadn't been attacked there because there was hardly any blood on the bed, and there was hardly any blood on him. He had 2 stab wounds to the heart. So it wasn't this huge overkill and anger. It was 2 stab wounds to the heart, and then it was determined that he had been washed and then placed on the bed. I think his knees were up and he was placed on the bed and he had no clothes on. So very different ways of treating, assuming at this point, as they were, that it was one killer. But it was 2 very different ways of handling these people after they had been killed. This is the bit that I find tricky, because it's like, what happened? So there was DNA, male DNA, found on Alice and on Tybor. And it was suggestive that Alice, Tybor and another male, there's one person missing, Attila, it was determined that there had been sexual activity between the 3 of them. For 2 days, forensics, detectives, investigators were in and out of the flat. On the 3rd day, off they go. They leave. They've taken what they need to take with them, and the 2 bodies are removed from the property, and they close up the flat, probably with the crime scene tape and all of that sort of stuff. But then they need to return. They want to go back in and they want to go and look at more forensic evidence and stuff, because they go over it so thoroughly, don't they? So in they go again on the third day, but they notice that one of the bedroom doors, they'd left everything open inside the flat, but one of the bedroom doors was shut and it was locked from the inside. So what? And the tape and all of that business on the outside of the flat, everything had been locked from the outside. So it was like, what is going on? What is going on? Can you imagine just being like the confusion? So then the investigators, they have to force their way into this bedroom. Who is there but none other than Atilla Ban? He is naked. Why has everyone got to be naked? But he is naked, laying on the bed with a knife, or two knives, I believe, protruding from himself. And he's drunk as a skunk. And it's a very odd, very weird. Like, can you imagine? What, mate? What is this? At first, they couldn't really get any. He was a bit useless. They couldn't get information out of Atilla. He acted like he was dumb, like he couldn't speak. So he was trying to communicate with them in like weird. I think he was drunk. I'm sure I read he was drunk. But you know what drunk people are like. Oh, and he was a state. He had blood all over him. He had these knives in him. And it was just a huge mess. And he wasn't communicating with them properly. So off he gets taken to hospital because he's, God knows, like they need to check him out, make sure, see what's going on. And then when he is in hospital, he is arrested for the murder of Alice and of Tybor. And then when he is more with it, they interview him. And the story that he had to say is just his version of events is that everybody leaves the party and it just leaves Alice, Tybor and himself. And that he can remember that all three of them went into the bedroom, they were all on the bed, and that the three of them had a threesome, basically. And he can remember that. Then he remembers nothing, that old number, until the morning when he comes to. He said he knew that he'd killed them, but he had no memory, no recollection of doing it. What he does remember, though, is that he then ran a bath and he removed all of Tybor's clothes. He then got into the bath and brought Tybor's body with him, and he had a bath with Tybor's body. And he said that the reason he did that is because he was going to unalive himself, and he attempted to a few times. Oh, crikey. In different ways. And he didn't want to be alone when he died. So he put Tybor's body into the bathtub with him. I call BS on that. When his attempts to do that in the bath weren't successful, he removed himself and Tybor from the bath, and then he placed Tybor on the bed in this position. So on his back with no clothes on, washed, with his knees bent. I don't know whether that means bent upwards or bent to the side. I'm not sure. But that's what he did. After this, and this is the most bizarre thing. This is one of the most unusual cases that I have read. Every sort of time when I was researching, what? Really? Oh, wow. So then, rather than escape, he cut the side of, I'll share a picture of it, he cut the side of the divan bed, the base of the bed that he has just placed Tybor's body on. He grabbed himself some water, he had his phone, must have put that on silent, and a few supplies, and he then slipped underneath the divan and went under there. He hid himself under the frickin' bed. Why? So he's not running. Maybe he was just off his pickle. Maybe he was still drunk. I don't know. Maybe he just, I don't know why. But that's what he did. And he was there for 2 days. He cut little holes in the divan so that he could have a little peek out. He could see. And I mean, you could, he was there for 2 days. So the whole time that the investigators, the detectives, the forensics, they were there chatting, like obviously not like, they're professionals, but they're talking, is the word, talking about the case. They're going to be sharing information, their knowledge, insights. Maybe they do have a little joke and a laugh. I don't know. Keep it light. Heavy job. But they were there for 2 days and he was there the entire freaking time under the bed. A divan is, some people are like, oh my God, I can't believe they didn't check under the bed. But like, I'm going to give them a pass on that one, because it's not like a bed on legs. I'll share another picture of a divan, and it's like he just sliced it. Probably had sheets over it. You wouldn't think in a million years to cut open a divan to have a look and see. Well, maybe they do now, but anyone on that case, probably they're just like, look, cut the bed open, have a look. But you wouldn't think to do that. It's not like a bed that someone could just slip under. It was crafty. So I will give them a pass on that, I think, because you wouldn't even think that someone would do that. There is a case where someone hid in a sofa. Have I covered it? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, you don't expect these things, it's not normal. Also, they reckon that he was already under the bed, excuse me, when he had updated his Facebook status to say, like, oh, I wish I could wake up from this nightmare. They think he was already under the bed. Imagine he hadn't put his phone on silent and worker ringing. Can you imagine? He'd be found quickly then, but no, he did have it on silent. They did have a guard outside of the flat, a policeman there the whole time. So another reason why it was so freaky that they walked in and they found this person. How did you get in? So yeah, bless them. That must have been like heart failure. He was under that bed for 2 days, and when it went quiet, when people weren't there, he just slipped out and then went and obviously drank more alcohol, and then went and lay in his room and locked the door. The trial began on the 9th of July in 2012, and the prosecution said they painted the picture based on testimony from people that worked there with them, that Attila, this was likely a crime, a murder, due to the fact that Attila was incredibly jealous of anybody that was with Tybor and that he was obsessed with him. And it all just became too much. They believe that when Attila saw Tybor and Alice kissing, when everyone else had gone home, that it was too much for him. He was filled with rage. We don't know whether there was a threesome situation, but I almost feel like that's not the case. I think that things happened between Alice and Tybor. Perhaps they had gone to the bedroom together. But then I believe that any DNA evidence that is on Alice or Tybor is from afterwards, after they were killed. But I can't be sure. Maybe they did. Maybe that was what happened, and they had a threesome, and it just was too much for Attila to handle, and he became enraged and was so jealous. Perhaps. But I kind of like to think not. I think the reason I think that quite strongly is that Tybor, relentlessly, he continuously, always, was like, no. He rebuffed all of Attila's advances. So I don't then think he's going to be like, oh, go on then, just for tonight. So that's why I think that. I don't think he would have been, I think he was quite firm about, no, I don't want, I'm not gay, I don't want to do that. So that's why I think that, I'm not disgusted by the thought of a threesome, by the way, each to their own, if that's what they were up to. But I just feel like that's not what happened. That's just my feeling. Yeah, I just checked my notes again, and people actually said that Attila relentlessly, that is the word they used, relentlessly pursued Tybor. How crazy, because that's so unkind, isn't it? And so, this guy's 31, and he's living with this young man. It's like, whoa, that's not okay. That's quite a lot, isn't it? That, too much, back off, relentlessly. Attila said, quote, I accept that I killed them. I just can't remember what happened. He was found guilty and he was sentenced to 26 years. And I find that crazy low, because lots of other people agree, just because, I mean, he killed 2 people. I know this, like, every life is precious, but they were 20 years old. They had their whole life ahead of them. They were gifted and beautiful and talented. He took their lives and he got 26 years. And then obviously the chance for parole, so that he might not be let out. But I just find I don't know, I don't like it. And I think that he's a very dangerous person, don't you? I think that that's very dangerous. Also, he never ever has said any more about what happened, so the families have no closure, if you like, on the final moments of their loved ones. And I know that that sounds odd, but Alice's mum said she even though it would be hard to hear, she would rather know exactly what happened in Alice's final moments rather than her imagination. And I get that. Like, that's just awful, isn't it? Like, what happened? I think it's so sad when people don't get to know that. I find it really interesting with the posing of Tybor's body. Was it remorse because he washed him, like he washed everything away, like he made him clean, and then he posed him on the bed? So I, from the sounds of it, no matter which way I think of it, it sounds like he posed him on the bed in an almost sort of sexual way. So to me, that's control. Like, I finally have control over you. Like, I've wanted you all this time and now I have you. So like the washing is almost like because he loved him, and I use that word like, you know, in his mind. But like, you know, he was caring for him and washing him and making him clean and like taking care of his body, but then he posed it in that sort of way, and I just feel like it was an issue. It was that's him sort of like having care, again, care and control. And then, I mean, he stabbed Tybor just twice in the heart, but with Alice, and he covered her face with a pillow or a cushion, and he just couldn't look at her face. Whether that is remorse, I don't know, or anger, like so angry. But 22 stab wounds, and he didn't take her clothes off, he didn't wash her, he didn't put her on a bed or a sofa, he didn't make her comfortable in any way. He just left her on the floor with a cushion over her face, like, you know, she was a nothing, she was an invisible, like she didn't exist. And that's a lot of stab wounds, isn't it? 22. That was anger and rage. That's what I think anyway. CSI safe. Alice's family set up a foundation in her memory. You can find it at www.aliceadamsfoundation.com. And also, they created a tree house in her name, and you can find that online as well. And people can go, and it's just, you know, to honour her memory, because she was creative and she was outdoorsy and she liked to make tree houses and things like that. So I think that's really sweet. I think it's... What else can you do when someone is gone? Because it's common as well for families. They do often set up foundations and try and get laws changed and things like that. And I think all of your grief and your anger and your frustration and just like all of that love that you have for that person, I think when like it has to just go somewhere. It must be such a horrible thing, because it's hard enough when you lose somebody in a natural way. Is that how you would say it? You know, like it's grieving the loss of somebody is just awful anyway, but to have somebody taken from you and in a really violent way like that as well, it must just be, yeah, there's a lot of shock and stuff as well that goes along with that, I suppose. But it seems really common that parents and loved ones channel their grief and all of that energy and that love, and yeah, probably all of that, like anger, all of the emotions, it drives them to do things in memory of their loved one. And when you think about it, how many laws have been changed through things like that, it's actually like, it's mind-blowing, isn't it? Mind-blowing. But at least something does come out of these things sometimes. It's a shame that it has to happen. And that is all I have for you on today's case. Just a bizarre case. It hasn't really helped my melancholy, actually, because it's a bit of a leaves a funny taste in your mouth, this case, doesn't it? How are we all? I apologise for missing last week. It's been such a time of it. You know, when that just happens in life. I have sciatica, it's so much better. It's like 90% better. But I was so, it was awful. Couldn't really move. Have I told you this already? I don't know, because I think I've missed 2 weeks, but it's just been a bit miserable, to be honest. Yeah, and I'm quite uncomfortable all of the time. I think I'm just getting used to it, but I'm going to have to start doing Pilates. That's doctor's orders. These things happen. I mean, there's worse things, isn't there? So I have missed you greatly. And we had Halloween, didn't we? And you know what it's like with kids. Like, it was busy. It was a busy week. So yeah, it's all been going on. I'm up the shed. I made it with my fancy glass with my name on it. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Hope you join me next week for another true crime story and a glass or a jar or a pint. This is water, by the way. Imagine, of gin. I hope you've had a lovely week. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all soon. Bye.